I never thought something as small as a broken washing machine could set off a chain of events that would dismantle my marriage. But that's exactly where it began, a steady, annoying drip from the laundry room that I kept promising I'd fix but never did. My name is Eric, 38 years old, married to Clara for 11 years. Clara was the kind of woman who could make a plain white t-shirt look like it belonged on a magazine cover. Warm, funny, and fiercely independent, she was my safe place, my best friend, and, until recently, the person I trusted the most in this world. Life had been busy lately, work projects piling up, overtime creeping into weekends, and me coming home just in time to eat reheated leftovers before collapsing in bed. Clara tried to be patient, but I could see the loneliness in her eyes. Our conversations became shorter. Our intimacy less frequent. I told myself it was just a phase. We'd been through them before. Then the washer broke. Not completely, it still churned, but it leaked like it was crying for help. Clara mentioned it twice, maybe 3 times, before I finally admitted I didn't have time to deal with it. Call someone, I said, distracted by my laptop. I'll pay for it. She sighed and nodded. I didn't even look up. 2 days later, she told me a repairman was coming on Friday morning while I was at work. His name was Leo. I didn't think twice about it. In fact, I was grateful someone else would handle it. I didn't ask what he looked like, how old he was, or whether he worked for a company or was just some local handyman. I didn't care. That's how clueless I was. When I got home that evening, Clara was different. It wasn't obvious, just lighter. Like a hidden spark had been lit. She was humming while making dinner. Her hair was tied up in a loose bun, and she had that glow I hadn't seen in a long time. I even teased her about it. "You're in a good mood," I said, dropping my briefcase. "Yeah," she replied casually. Leo came by. He fixed the washer. Turns out it was a simple hose replacement. "That's great," I said, not thinking anything of it. "How much did it cost?" "Not much," she said, turning back to the stove. He was really nice. Knew what he was doing. I didn't catch the faint smile that lingered on her lips when she said really nice. Over the next couple of weeks, I noticed she seemed busier. She dressed up more often, even on days she claimed she was just running errands. She spent more time in the laundry room than before, reorganizing things that didn't need reorganizing. At night, she'd sit on her phone, smiling faintly at messages I assumed were from her sister or a friend. One Thursday, I came home earlier than usual and heard her on the phone in the laundry room. She didn't notice I was there. Her voice was soft, almost teasing. "No, I can't this weekend. Eric's home. Maybe next week? You know I want to." I froze. My stomach twisted. She laughed at whatever the person said and replied in a whisper, "You're terrible." "Stop it. I can't think straight when you talk like that." When she hung up, she turned and saw me in the doorway. For a split second, her face went pale, then quickly shifted back to calm. "Oh, you're home early," she said, forcing a smile. "Who were you talking to?" I asked. "Just Maria," she said smoothly. "She wants to go shopping next week." I nodded, pretending to believe her. But something in her tone had been different. Too soft. Too intimate. My gut screamed at me, but I brushed it off. Clara wouldn't cheat. Not Clara. A few days later, she mentioned casually that Leo needed to double-check the washer. Something about making sure the seal was tight. Again, I didn't question it. I should have. The following Friday, I came home for lunch unexpectedly. My office was being fumigated, so they sent us home early. I didn't text Clara because I thought I'd surprise her. And I did. When I walked in, the house was oddly quiet. Then I heard low murmurs and soft laughter coming from the laundry room. My chest tightened. I moved closer, my footsteps silent on the hardwood floor. The door was slightly ajar. Through the gap, I saw her. Clara was leaning against the washer, her head tilted back, eyes half closed. And there he was, Leo. Broad shoulders, tan skin, a confident grin. His hands were on her waist, his lips grazing her neck. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. It felt like my soul left my body. For a moment, I didn't know what to do. My heart was pounding so hard it drowned out every thought. My wife, the woman I built a life with, was melting into another man's arms, in our home. In the same room where we kept our son's baby clothes, where we folded our laundry together. I wanted to burst in, to scream, to rip him away from her. But instead, I stepped back silently, retreating into the hallway. My hands were trembling. My mind was blank. I grabbed my car keys and left without a word. I drove for hours that day, aimlessly, my phone buzzing with Clara's texts asking where I was. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My entire reality had just shattered in a single glimpse. I didn't sleep that night. I barely even blinked. I sat in my car outside a deserted park, watching the moonlight ripple on the surface of a quiet pond, wondering how I had missed the signs. Every laugh, every gentle brush of her hand across my cheek, every I love you she'd spoken over the past few weeks, all of it felt like a lie replaying in my mind. My stomach twisted with a nauseating cocktail of anger and heartbreak. I thought about going home and confronting her immediately. Just storming into the house, demanding answers, making her confess. But as I imagined it, I realized I wasn't ready to hear her voice. Not yet. Not after seeing her wrapped up in that man's arms like I was some stranger she'd already forgotten. So I drove back around midnight, quietly slipping into the house. The lights were off. Clara was already in bed. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom for a moment, watching her sleep. She looked peaceful, like someone with no weight on their conscience. Or maybe she was just good at compartmentalizing. I slept on the couch that night, staring at the ceiling until the sky turned pale gray. The next morning, she was already up when I dragged myself into the kitchen. She smiled at me like nothing had happened, like the world wasn't crumbling around us. "Morning," she said cheerfully, handing me a mug of coffee. "You came home so late. Where were you?" I stared at her, searching her eyes for some hint of guilt. "Just went for a drive," I said flatly. "Needed to clear my head." She nodded, pretending to believe me, or maybe she didn't even care. "Well, I'm glad you're okay." I was a little worried. Worried. The word almost made me laugh. Was she worried I'd come home too early next time? I sipped my coffee and kept quiet, studying her every move. She was wearing her usual soft gray sweater, her hair in a neat ponytail. To anyone else, she would look like the perfect wife. But I could see the subtle differences now, the way she glanced at her phone more often, the tiny spark in her eyes that wasn't for me anymore. Over the next week, I said nothing. I went to work, came home, played my role as if nothing had changed. But inside, I was unraveling. Every time she smiled at me, I felt like I was being mocked. Every time she touched me, I felt sick. I started noticing more details, the faint traces of cologne that weren't mine, the way she'd take extra time doing laundry or organizing the utility room. She started dressing nicer on random afternoons, and when I'd ask where she was going, she'd just shrug and say, "Out, just errands." I knew exactly where she was going. I considered hiring a private investigator, but what more proof did I need? I had already seen them together. Still, I wanted to know how deep it went. How long had it been happening? Was this just physical, or did she actually have feelings for this guy? So, one Friday, I pretended I had an out-of-town meeting. I kissed her goodbye in the morning, pretending everything was normal. She smiled and told me to drive safe. But instead of leaving, I parked down the street and waited. Hours passed. Around noon, a familiar white van pulled into the driveway. I saw Leo get out, casual and confident, toolbox in hand like he owned the place. Clara opened the door and greeted him with that same warm smile she used to reserve for me. They didn't even go to the laundry room this time. Through the curtains, I saw them in the living room. He kissed her the moment he stepped inside. She didn't hesitate. They laughed together, holding each other like they'd been doing it for years. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My heart pounded in my ears, and I could barely breathe. I wanted to run in, drag him out, and scream at her. But something in me stopped. Not yet. I needed to hear it from her. I needed her to admit it. So I waited until he left. I watched him casually walk back to his van a few hours later, wiping his hands on a rag like he'd just fixed a pipe instead of breaking my life apart. That night, Clara acted like nothing had happened. She made dinner, laughed at a sitcom on TV, and even leaned her head on my shoulder like she used to. It was the cruelest kind of betrayal, the kind that pretends everything is fine. After she went to bed, I sat in the dark living room and thought about the years we'd spent together. Our wedding day. The tiny apartment we first shared. The late-night talks about our future. How did it all lead here? To her choosing a man who fixed appliances over the husband who had built a life with her? The next day, I finally spoke. We were having breakfast, the usual Saturday morning routine. She was scrolling through her phone while sipping her coffee. "Clara," I said, my voice steady but low. She looked up. "Yeah? Who is Leo to you?" Her fingers froze on the phone. Her eyes flickered just for a moment. Then she forced a confused smile. "The repairman? Why?" "Don't lie to me," I said, my tone sharper now. I saw you with him." Her face went pale. For a moment, she just sat there, her mouth opening and closing like she was searching for the right words. "Eric, it's not what you think," she started, but her voice cracked. I laughed bitterly. "It's exactly what I think. I saw you. In our house. With him." She lowered her gaze, tears welling in her eyes. I didn't mean for it to happen." I slammed my hand on the table. "Didn't mean for it to happen? How many times, Clara? How long has this been going on?" She covered her face with her hands. "A few weeks," she whispered. "It was just. I was lonely." "You're always busy." I didn't. "Stop." My voice was ice. "Don't you dare put this on me. You had a choice. And you chose him." She sobbed quietly, but I felt nothing. Just an empty, hollow ache where my love for her used to be. "I love you, Eric," she said weakly. "It didn't mean anything. It was just. I don't know, I felt seen again." I stared at her, my jaw tight. "You felt seen by a guy who charges by the hour? Is that what you wanted? A quick thrill while your husband was out working for the life we built?" She didn't answer. She just cried. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. "I'm done for now. I can't even look at you." As I stepped outside, I heard her call my name, but I didn't turn back. I drove without a destination that day, just like the first time I caught her. The difference was now the truth was spoken. No more denial. No more pretending. Clara had admitted it, and with that admission, something inside me, something sacred, snapped. I ended up at the small beach where we used to go when we were younger, back when things were simple and love felt unshakable. I sat there for hours, replaying everything. How many times had I overlooked her subtle complaints? How many times had I assumed she'd always wait for me to come home, no matter how long it took? But no matter how much I tried to rationalize it, I kept returning to the same thought: she chose this. She chose him. I didn't go back that night. I stayed at a cheap motel, staring at the ceiling until the faint morning light crept in. By the time I returned home, Clara was waiting in the kitchen, her eyes puffy from crying. She stood up when she saw me. "Eric," she said softly, almost pleading. "Please, we need to talk." I stayed by the door, my hand still gripping the keys. "There's nothing left to talk about." "Yes, there is," she insisted, stepping closer. "I'm sorry. I swear I'll end it." It was stupid, she stopped herself, her voice breaking. I lost sight of what we had. I needed to feel something. I let out a cold laugh. You needed to feel something, so you invited a stranger into our home? Into the same room where we fold our clothes together? Into the place where we made a life? Tears streamed down her face. It wasn't about him. It wasn't about Leo. It was about me. I felt invisible. Like I was just here. You stopped looking at me the way you used to. I clenched my fists. So instead of telling me, instead of trying to fix it, you destroyed it. You didn't even fight for us, Clara. You just gave yourself away. She sank into a chair, sobbing quietly. I don't want to lose you. I love you, Eric. Please, I can change. We can heal from this. Her words hung heavy in the air, but they felt hollow. Something about seeing her in another man's arms had carved a wound so deep that I couldn't imagine stitching it shut. Trust wasn't just cracked, it was gone. I loved you, I said finally, my voice low and steady. But the woman I loved doesn't exist anymore. You killed her the moment you let him touch you. She flinched as if I'd struck her. So, you're leaving? I stared at her for what felt like an eternity. I thought about all the years we had shared, the inside jokes, the quiet nights, the dreams we built together. But those memories now felt tainted, like photographs burned around the edges. I'm leaving, I said at last. She sobbed harder, covering her face with her hands. Please don't go. I can't lose you. I made a mistake. Please, Eric. I turned away before my resolve could weaken. I went upstairs, grabbed a duffel bag, and filled it with clothes. I didn't pack everything, I couldn't bring myself to stay long enough to decide what was worth keeping. When I came back down, Clara was still sitting there, trembling, like a child who'd broken something she couldn't replace. Where will you go? She asked in a whisper. I don't know, I said. But anywhere is better than here. I left without looking back. The next few weeks felt surreal. I stayed at a friend's place while I figured out my next steps. Clara called and texted constantly at first, apologies, desperate pleas, long messages filled with memories and promises. I didn't answer. Eventually, her messages slowed, then stopped altogether. I met with a lawyer and started the process of separation. The paperwork felt cold, clinical, like dismantling a machine piece by piece. But with every form I signed, I felt a strange sense of clarity. Friends asked if I'd consider forgiving her. Some even suggested couples counseling, saying people make mistakes. But it wasn't just a mistake. It was a choice, repeated over weeks, maybe months. It was bringing a stranger into our space and lying to my face while acting like nothing had changed. No amount of therapy could erase the image of her leaning into him, or the memory of her soft laughter in his presence. That wasn't something I could unsee or unfeel. Months later, I ran into her at the grocery store. She looked thinner, tired, like the weight of what she'd done still haunted her. She gave me a small, sad smile. Hi, Eric, she said softly. Clara, I replied, my tone neutral. How are you? I'm fine, I said, and for once, I actually meant it. She nodded, looking like she wanted to say more but couldn't find the words. We stood there in silence for a moment before I stepped away. That was the last time I saw her. It's strange how life keeps moving after something like that. At first, it feels like the world should stop out of respect for your pain. But it doesn't. It keeps spinning, forcing you to adapt. I learned to live without her. I learned to cook for one, to fall asleep in a quiet apartment, to fill the void she left with hobbies and new friends. Slowly, the ache dulled. And eventually, I realized something important: betrayal doesn't define you. It breaks you, yes. It changes you. But it doesn't end you. I survived.